Farm Bureau. Rob, let's start with the news of the day, which was the craziness of the betting markets because of a single Reddit post and the possibility, or at least some people think the possibility, that Will Levis could go number one overall. We spent the entire season talking about Will Levis as a college player is not a first-round pick, and now he's either going to be the first or second quarterback taken, it appears. Why do teams love him so much?
Well, it seems every year, every draft cycle, the further we get away from actual football being played, one quarterback kind of rises despite maybe some clear questions on tape. Um, I truly don't believe he'll be the first quarterback taken, but the fact that he's very seriously could be the second quarterback taken is pretty mind-boggling to me as someone who has him ranked as the fourth quarterback in this class.
So you've got, obviously, Bryce Young ahead of him, C.J. Stroud ahead of him. Who's the third you've got in front of him?
I've got Anthony Richardson, and to
Okay.
me, the difference there is Richardson's raw tools and the fact that he is going to be just a 21-year-old rookie. There's just so much more upside with his profile versus Levis's.
All right, so who's the right comp for Anthony Richardson? Because we've seen quarterbacks come out before with incredible athletic ability, and sometimes teams reach as a result of that. But we've been hearing this for 2 years, right? Anthony Richardson, freakish athlete, NFL teams are going to love him, and yet, again, kind of like Will Levis, didn't really produce that much on the field, and frankly hasn't played that much football. So why? Why have teams not learned who's the comp, who's the guy that makes sense?
To me, the guy I thought of when I initially watched him was Dante Culpepper, kind of
Ooh,
just the
okay.
freak show, 255-pound quarterback running a sub 4.6 rocket launcher arm. When the good is good, it's impressive. Obviously, Culpepper's career got cut short by a knee injury, but it's with Richardson, it's what he could be. And I think when looking at a guy like him with all these raw tools where it doesn't totally align with the tape versus looking at a guy last year with Malik Willis where it was kind of a similar story, and obviously Willis falls to the third round, doesn't look very good as a rookie. I think the difference there is Richardson does the little things so much better than a raw project like a Willis did. He navigates the pocket really well. He remains a passer when the play breaks down. He doesn't just truly only lean on that athleticism. And the fact that he has that athleticism and that absurd running ability really raises his floor as a prospect as we see more and more NFL offenses embrace the running quarterback.
Everybody, by the way, should hate Dante Culpepper. He's part of the reason for Alabama's dominance over the last decade and a half. If Nick Saban has a quarterback other than Dante Culpepper, maybe he wins more at Miami. Maybe he's never the head coach at Alabama, and we all have a better life. I don't know if you're an Alabama guy or not, but it's partly Dante Culpepper's fault.
Oh man, yeah, if only Miami had signed Drew Brees, things would be very different in the NFL today.
There you go. There's some Saints fans that hate you for that, but yes, otherwise it could be very, very different in college. Hey, let's talk about a couple of guys from Mississippi. Jonathan Mingo, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. Peter Schrager had him, I think, going to the Saints at the last pick of the first round. He seems to have really impressed people in the workout cycle, the lead up to this draft. What's the ceiling? What's the floor for Jonathan Mingo?
So I think part of it is when you get a 220-pound receiver from Ole Miss, you think A.J. Brown right off the bat. And Mingo is not A.J. Brown. I mean, the production in college shows that. But what he is a 220-pound receiver, runs a 4.46, verticals 39.5 inches, and has some of the best ball skills in the entire class. And it's worth noting that this wide receiver class in general is very small. There's so many sub 185-pound wide receivers. So it's a breath of fresh air when you see a big guy like Mingo who can really go up and win it. And so I think the first round talk is a little rich. he is going to be a darling on day two. Just he has a skill set that there isn't really anybody else in this class who can do some of the things he can do at that size with that athleticism. And he actually reminds me of maybe a higher end version of Quincy Enunwa, the old Jets receiver who had a really good career before he got hurt with a neck injury.
Give me a team real quick that Mingo would make sense for.
The Saints, well, Schrager's got it with that fit with the Saints. Especially as we've seen Michael Thomas probably never becoming the guy he used to be. Mingo makes a lot of sense as that kind of that power slot. He's an X receiver, but I think if he moved inside, he would be such a mismatch as a power slot at that size, and he could take over that Michael Thomas role. I think that's a really good fit. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars would be really interesting. They've got a bunch of thinner receivers, so getting a big X receiver like Mingo would be really, really fun. And the New York Giants are another one where they've got just a lot of smaller receivers, and adding a guy like Mingo into the mix would really kind of complete that group.
All right, I feel like we've spent 2 years talking about Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State as a first-rounder. And he goes to the combine and he runs a 4.35, and he jumps 37.5 inches. He's plenty athletic, and he's got the game tape to match it up. But most of these mocks now have him kind of sliding to early second round. I mean, I know the glaring thing is 166 pounds, but at some point, is what you've done on the field not enough?
I think something else that's working against Forbes is this is a really deep and impressive cornerback class. So when you're trying to stack these guys, you're kind of looking at Forbes and you're, well, the weight's a concern. And so I'm going to slide him behind this guy, even though maybe his tape isn't quite as good as Forbes. There's less overall questions because he weighs 195 pounds. The 166, we've just never seen a guy weigh so little at 6'1". On the flip side, the man is among the best defensive playmakers in the class. The way he sees the game, he has fantastic eyes in zone coverage. You'll see him jump routes all the time, and it pays off big. Obviously, is the FBS record for pick sixes in a career. I think with him, it's just how long will he last in the league when there's running backs like Saquon Barkley and Nick Chubb, and he's going to have to lay the lumber on those types of guys. And it's not that he can't, because he is a very willing tackler for a corner of his size. It's just those bumps and bruises, they add up. And when your frame's so small, it just becomes a concern. And really, the NFL draft season is about kind of finding these holes in good prospects to kind of separate them. And so I just think that's something in a deep corner class that's been a main talking point with Forbes that's hard to get over.
Visiting with Rob Paul. He's with the first pick. We got a couple of minutes left, Rob. I'm curious if there are any less high-profile guys from Ole Miss or Mississippi State that you see that we ought to be keeping an eye on. An offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a linebacker who's going to hear their name called maybe on the third day of the draft and is still going to have that dream come true, even if they're not a first-round darling.
I'm glad you asked that, because I love Mississippi State's Tyrus Wheat, a guy who played nearly every position on that defense. You'll see him line up as an off-ball linebacker. He's dropping into zone coverage. Then you'll see him playing as a 4-eye or a 5-tack. He's playing a true defensive end with his hand in the dirt. Really, really powerful player at the point of attack. Sets a strong edge. Can kind of convert some speed to power as a pass rusher. He to me is just going to be a really useful guy you get in probably the 5th, 6th round range. That's part of your rotation on the defensive line. And I love defenders like that who can just do a lot of things at maybe nothing fantastic, but a lot of things really well.
Interesting stuff, Rob. Thanks so much for your time. Great catching up this afternoon, and hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Richard. This has been a blast.